Hi class, my name is John Morawski. Thank you very much for coming out to our presentation today. My presentation is going to be in regards to retirement planning and how important it is to start as early as possible. This way we can have the retirement and live the life that we deserve after working so hard for so many years. It's something that every individual in this world should not have to worry about and should be able to enjoy their golden years with their grandchildren or their loved ones or anybody who they see fit. Going to discuss some key factors to consider while going through your retirement planning. The first section would be to start early. Starting early is so huge in our industry. It's something that people really can't even fathom, because when you're young, you think you can take the world by storm and you have no issues at all, and you'll be able to come through it with flying colors. A lot of times this isn't the case. Second part that we're going to discuss is compound interest. Compound interest is something that after you see my little presentation here, your jaw will hit the floor as compared to what can happen when you start planning for your retirement. Plans go by what's best suited for the individual. There are so many different plans you can think of for retirement in regard to, say, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs. Again, we're going to go through that in a little bit in our presentation. But there are so many different plans out there that not all of them are the same for each person. It depends on the individual as to what we pick for you and what will work for you. Also, Social Security is another thing that we're going to really get into deep, because there's a very common misconception about Social Security that the people of yesteryear are learning now that we must learn from as children and as young adults. So let's have a little question for right now. Who wants to work until the day they die? Raise your hand. Anybody out there? All right, we'll do this easier. We'll do a multiple choice. First up, is it everyone? Everyone wants to work until they just pretty much hit the floor. Or is it no one? Nobody wants to work until the day they die. Or is it just my man Clint Eastwood out there making movies until he's just in his wheelchair and he's just going to be done? Answer, of course, it's B. Nobody wants to work until the day they die. That's why it's so important to discuss retirement planning at such an early age, because the more you save and the more you plan, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So that brings us to our next important question. When should we start saving for our retirement? Yes, her reaction says it all. Proper answer to this question is quite shocking. Your early to mid-20s. If you can start saving in your early to mid-20s, you're going to be so much better off than a lot of other people out there in the working world, because, again, with youth, you think you can take the world by storm and you can do no wrong. And I'm not going to sit here and try and say that you're wrong in the aspect on you're going, but a lot of times people are mistaken in what they think they can accomplish. Consequences of starting late. It can mean living a life that you're not going to enjoy as much as you could be if you take a couple of extra steps planning earlier. Doesn't mean there's no hope. There is definitely hope, but it's just going to be a little harder on yourself. And the largest component of the consequence of starting late is that compound interest that I was talking to you about earlier. Compound interest is the single most important factor that you must consider in your saving habits. In our example, we're going to look at the difference between people starting to save $5,500 annually, with a modest 6% interest rate, as compared to some people who start later in life. Now, this next section is what I call a picture worth $1 million. Take a look at this. This graph shows when somebody starts saving at age 25, a regular $5,500 a year. That's actually, for an IRA, the maximum amount you're allowed to save in an IRA. Look at the dip. If you start at age 35, 45, 55. Remember how we were saying, it makes it a lot harder on you if you start later. Does it make it impossible? No. There are ways you can get a little bit of a better life. But if you start in your mid-20s, early, even if you look when you start at age 35, you start at age 35. That's as high as you're going to go. Let's put some numbers on these. Person who starts to save that $5,500 a year at age 25, you're going to amass $970,000 plus. $970,000 that you can use in another account to retire on. Look at the dip when you start at age 35. It goes down to $510,000. 45. You're not even getting half. $250,000. Not even getting the $250,000. You're getting the $249,000. Starting at age 55, you only got $103,000 to retire on. How long do you think that's going to last, everybody? Now, these numbers are actually based upon the additional $1,000 you're allowed to contribute into an IRA once you get age 55. Before age 55, you can only do $5,500 a year. After age 55, you can do $6,500 a year. To break down this easier, look at my man Bluto. $5,500 annually breaks down to $458 monthly or $115 weekly at age 25. That's when you're taking the world by storm. You know, granted, it's going to be a lot for your first-time job, but if you do it properly, and again, the benefits are going to far outweigh the consequences by starting early. The different plans that I was talking to you about, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401k plan and 403b plan. 401k is more for where you work. A lot of times you'll be able to put pre-tax dollars into an account and your company will match that up to a certain percentage. 403b is pretty much the same thing, it's just for nonprofit organizations. Annuities are another avenue that you can delve into in regards to retirement. Those are a little more tricky and they cost a lot more to do. So if you run into, say, the lottery winnings or a large sum of money from insurance, that's an avenue that you can go down as well. Social Security. This is a really, really big hot topic right now. And a lot of people are very confused in regards to the meaning of Social Security and what it can actually do for you. So let's look at the bullet point number 1. Can no longer be the only source of retirement income. That was good back in the day, in our grandparents, in our great-grandparents' era, when people weren't living as long. Retirement age was 62 back then. The average life expectancy of everybody was 66. 66. So if you take that in consideration, you had 4 years that you were living on Social Security for the most part, most of the population, and they were dying at that point. So that's why Social Security back then was moving on forward and progressing nicely. Nowadays, the big difference is people are living a lot longer. The average life expectancy of somebody at this point is 92 for a male and 97, ballpark for both figures, for a female. Retirement age hasn't really changed that much. It's 65. So now people are living close to 30 years longer than what they were back in the past. So that's why Social Security has become such a hotbed issue, and it's no longer the best way to save for retirement because people will not be able to survive on that. I see so many elderly right now, including both of my grandparents, are struggling because that's the mentality that they had. I wish I had the knowledge that I have now to give to them earlier in life to say, hey, this works back in the 50s, 60s. The new millennium, it does not work anymore. People must start saving additionally on their own to supplement Social Security. Again, going over the struggling seniors. Education is the biggest tool that we have in our tool bag to give to people. I even tell it to my kids today, my 13, 9, 6, and 3-year-old. They all know they're going to start saving once they graduate college a minimum of $115 a week to be able to be somewhere better than I am. I want great things for myself. I want better things for my children. That's what our goal is, and that's what my goal is as a financial advisor. I want to make sure you're on the best way possible. If I can put you somewhere to be in the best space, that's what I'm going to do. The future. Again, we must utilize Social Security as an additional means, as a supplemental means. Look at bullet point number 2. Again, with education. It is extremely important to be educated in the ways of the world and with compound interest. And my favorite little saying over here is, wealth is not measured by the amount of money that we have. It's measured by the way we spend the rest of our lives independently. I, for one, do not want to have to leech onto my children to be able to survive when I'm in my passing years. I want to be able to leave a legacy on for them so they know that I did everything I could to give them the best life possible. And I did not leave them a burden because I did not prepare myself. This is where the education is so important. Again, at this time, I'm going to open up the floor to some questions and answers. If you have anything at all, please raise your hand. Let me know. If not, thank you very, very much for coming out. I really appreciate it and hope to hear from you soon.